So, okay, yes. So, this is where I'm like, so we all started here. Actually, mine was deleted before, but I'm alive and I'm going on. So that's good. And they said he was probably gonna quit jail and stuff. Anyways, he said I want everything to be okay, but actually I'll end up in jail for this. I was like, huh? He was like, it'll take 10 years, and I was like, see, damn, I almost in my hand. I said, why would you end up in jail? And he said, not yet. I would do it when necessary. And I said, should I be worried? He said, no. And I said, I don't know. And that sounds serious. And he said, Darwin is correct. And he said, correct. And I said, what did you do? Is it really bad? He said, yes. And I'm like, oh, whoa, it's bad enough you spoke English. And he said, I know. And I said, can you tell me what you did, please? And then he said, I feel wrong. And I said, oh, so you only said try and get some rest and drink something. He said, I might have to do it. I'm not sick of making plans. Oh, bad plans? And he said, correct. I said, are you carving something? He said, correct. And I said, who? He said, correct. And I said, wait, like, start should be said. And he said, correct. Their name's Co. And then he said, correct. And just for a second, you can't do this. You can't, get everybody else's names. And I said, what does Co mean, a victim? And he said, I don't think it's possible. I said, what do you mean? What's not possible? And he said, I know. I said, you're very confusing. Are you going to hurt someone? He said, correct. I said, are you going to kill them? And he said, I will do it. I said, why? But I hate them. I said, what do they do? And they said they made me feel worse. Now, here's the thing. I said, could I talk to them? I want to give them a piece of my mind. I was actually just trying to, like get their user so I can like text them and do their phone or female, like, why? But then he says, has to tell. And I said, tell someone about the problem. Are you killing? No. He said, oh yeah, I will keep it a secret for life. And I said, okay, I'm gonna tell. And he put the small jack for relief or something. He said, please speak. He said, two questions. One, which one? Which, it's fun. I said, what happens if I tell someone, which I won't tell, don't worry. He said, Trace. No, Trace me still. I said, what's Coach used so I can go beneath the server? I also want to block them. And it was lie, do. Now, here's for you guys. Which actually there's two, so I should probably actually be aware. I don't know who it is. Anyway, to her, and he said, you. If I know, what if I told Henry what's happening to me? He said that I know. Which I told him. Yeah, I know. So again, I tell him, he said, I know. I said, what happens if I do? And he said, I don't know again. So will I die? And he said, I don't know. Will you do something? He said, I don't know. And then he says, the first thing I know. See? Or no. He said, have bye. Talk later, I gotta go. So bye. And I said, you can go somewhere else. He said, I didn't beat up. I felt so relieved when I heard that. Oh, thank God, you stay over there when the face feels for fine, I'll go face. I tried to trick when the face feeling. Now he knows my face. I don't know his. Yeah. Anyways, so let me cover this. Because if you want to talk to me, wait a minute. And I said, hi, did you kill that girl? And he said, yet. And I said, I didn't think he'd come back. And I said, for you, and then he said, and I said, just then, maybe talk. And then he said, that. And then 6 days have passed. What were you doing then? I just been being very off one lot because I'm always like that. And so yeah, I said, okay, English is pretty good, by the way. Hey, you up still? He said, hello, yes. I said, okay, do you need anything? I'm just so bored. I can do anything probably. Also, about that murderer. Could I help you do it? He said to me, I just want to sabotage him. I actually can't kill him. I'm not actually trying to break him, I promise. Or am I? He told me, I said, also, how old are you? What the freak? Why does it keep saying why does it keep showing that? I'm trying to say, also, how old are you? I'm curious. He said 12. And I said, same. And then he said, absolute. I mean, so he, I said, can I talk to me? But he said, absolute. I don't know what that means. I'm just gonna text him, see if he answers. Why does it keep disappearing when I look at it? I'm scared because it knows when I'm looking. Okay, I'm gonna look at it. There's another day in the circus. Hey, are you awake? And we'll see if he replies. Anyway. I feel weird and uncomfortable. Gonna cut this out. So he still hasn't replied yet. This is like 35 minutes. Not finished. Anyways, I did investigate this thing. It does say I'm craving meat. Give me some more meat. I don't know if I'm cannibalism or just eating. I don't know. So, this sounds like he's eating because I didn't really need it. Now, I'm gonna over here real quick. I'm gonna make something. I just leave it. Well, I just make, y'all wanna let me see if I can figure out a friend. Come here. Okay. I can't. Okay, hold on. Let me pause it real quick. It's gonna be Chat GPT. Chat GPT. Holy shit. Take the photos. Let's just go. This. So this is what it says.